There are some things I should do, and there are some things I need to do. So one of the core concepts that I want to establish for myself in this project is for the code to be maintainable. And in my mind, that evaluates to the code being both modular as well as being readable. So rather than jumping at something new and starting to implement something else, I think it's time to start refactoring. So I have two rather big files that I'm gonna need to refactor. And the first one is this create routine component, which in itself contains one interface as well as 3 other components. And the main component I need to refactor here is which I showed you from previous episode, the one which updates as well as create the routine, the actual routine. So it's a lot of code which I'm gonna need to refactor to separate components and to get these hooks out so I can separate the component from the actual operations in a more clean way. And the other part I need to refactor is this routine component, which is rendering the actual card of the routine. So for instance, here we have an icon button, and what it's going to do is it's going to show you a text, an icon, and it's going to activate a function when you click on it. I also have the delete modal in here, which is the thing that's going to show when you press here. So this is the delete modal, just the overlay. I have the edit button, which is this one, also in the file, as well as the routine component. So I'm gonna do quite a bit of refactoring. So I've done a bit of refactoring now, and only the routine component remains in the routine.tsx file. We have a separate file for the icon button component, and the same thing goes for the edit button and the delete modal. When it comes to the create routine mutation kind of component, the active create routine button, which is this thing, I've also changed something. So it's not by no means it's perfect, but it's a lot better, and I actually dare to touch it now. And the real thing which I changed was these 2 operations, the one for writing and creating, and the one for updating. So if we look at the component now in its current state, we can see that most of the thing what it's gonna deal with is the actual rendering of what's gonna be shown, as well as setting up the onSubmit function and setting up the form from React hook forms. So what I did to get rid of all the logic is that I wrapped the generated hooks with a custom hook. So if we go here into our use create routine, I created this custom hook which kind of just returns the generated hook with all the logic and how the actions are supposed to be performed. So what I mean by that is now we have a component, and this component in its current state mostly deals with how that component is supposed to be rendered. The actual logic for performing mutations and operations upon the data in the UI is placed in a separate location, so you're not entangling the rendering with the actual operations, but you have them separated. So I guess it makes it a bit more easier to read your code. So at least that's what I'm going for. And this concept of taking your business logic and wrapping it inside a hook is something that I learned from a talk made by Tanya Lindsley, which is the author of React Query, the state caching library that I'm using. And he had this talk about the different use cases for custom hooks, and I'll link it down below because it's a super good talk. But anyway, what he talked about was kind of exactly this, that if you're able to wrap kind of business logic inside hooks, and in that way your components are able to focus on whatever should be rendered, and you can just consume and use these hooks whenever you want to act upon your data. And in that way you're able to decouple UI state from the actual operations. And I found the concept very interesting, and that's why I'm trying it out. So this summer, in an attempt to become less terrible at designing, I read the book Refactoring UI by Adam Wathan, the creator of Tailwind. And in it, he describes the process for when you want to design something. And one of the things I took with me was the fact that you should wait on start adding colors to your website, and instead you should let the font sizes, the font weight, the kind of opacity in your text define the hierarchy before you start adding color, and you can let those type of elements create the actual visual hierarchy. And I kind of took that to heart, but it's come to this point where I think my application in its current state is looking very dull and simple, and it doesn't spark any joy. So I think it's time for me to start actually designing and coloring the application. Okay, so I'm done with initial styling for now, and this is kind of what I'm going for. So I have three possible options at the moment for the mobile view, and the real thing that's different about them is where to place this new routine button. So in this option, I would have it sticky at the bottom, so when you're scrolling, you're always able to create a new routine easily. And I think that's fine, but I think it also might be confusing, because in my desktop view, I want to have something like this, where you have a search bar and you have a new routine and you have a button for information about routines. And I don't know if it's bad user experience or design if this button would switch from being at the bottom to being up here instead. So I'm leaning towards this design more, where you have your search as well as new routine, and you don't have access to the information button at all. But that also leaves out a bit of functionality for the mobile users, and I'm not sure if that's good either. And in the final state, we have all three. We have a search bar, we have a new routine button, and we have an information button. But this kind of feels crammed, and I'm not really sold on it. So I'm probably gonna go with either of these two choices. I'm leaning more towards this kind of layout, because this is gonna be closer to the one which is going to be shown for the desktop view. But yeah, anyway, so that's what I'm thinking about at the moment. Okay, so the new design is now done and implemented, and this is what it looks like. So I've added a top navigation here, and I have one part of the navigation is more focused towards things that are more formal, so settings, sign out, maybe you want to find some inspiration, or you want to check out the community. And I also have a part of the navigation which is focused more towards the actual user. So his dashboard, which is empty, his routines, the journal, and goals. And I've also added this search bar. So later you're going to be able to search your routines. So maybe you only want so maybe you have a lot of routines, or maybe you want to filter for some specific habit, and you can check in which routine you have it. I also added a new routine button here. So you're gonna be able to add new routines from this position instead. And I also added a button so you can get information about routines, and I'm gonna show some text, but I haven't enabled it yet. And if we look in the mobile view, this is what it looks like now. So you can search and you can create a new routine, and we have a hamburger menu, and if we press here we get the same kind of options, but in that case we hide the bottom navigation, and we only show these things. So yeah, that's the new design done.
So this probably wasn't the most exciting episode, but it was something that had to be done. And for the next episode, I want to try something really cool. So stay tuned and thanks for watching.